for joining us today for the February forecast. My name is Myron Franz, Commissioner of Minnesota Management and Budget. And let me get the slide ready here. I'm joined, as Keith said, with Dr. Laura Kolumbakidis, State Economist, and Budget Director Margaret Kelly. The documents, you should all know, MMB's documents are available online at mn.gov/MMB under the tab Forecast and Updates. So today's forecast, let's go there. Actually, Warren Beatty did not give us this slide, so I think it's accurate. Today's forecast marks the eighth positive forecast balance in a row. So as you can see, the forecast balance now shows a $1.65 billion number, up from $1.4 billion in November, or a $250 million increase to the bottom line. We also have about $2 billion in cash and budget reserves. Looking to 20 and 21 in our planning estimate, you can see on the chart, we also see a projected planning estimate of $2.1 billion. This is also up since November by $684 million. At the last forecast presentation in December, I said that the forecast was boring because it was just more of the same. Good news, but more of the same. Well, this one is positively boring because it's more of the same, but it's got a nice kicker at the end. So if you look at this forecast balance, one of the things we want to talk about today is what's happened since the Great Recession. And as you know, since the Great Recession, the Minnesota economy has been on a steady recovery. And I want to recognize and applaud the people, hardworking people of Minnesota for the work they've done in Minnesota and their confidence in Minnesota. Their financial success is an important part of the state's financial success. And as our economy continues to grow, it is in part thanks to Minnesotans investing their time, talent, energy, and money in their futures in this state. We must not forget, however, that we must continue our work to eliminate disparities that still exist so that more Minnesotans can have more opportunities to succeed as well. In preparing for today, I spent a good deal of time considering how did we get 8 straight forecasts showing positive balances in a row. And let me assure you that this string of 8 is not by luck or by chance. Minnesota's 4 years of balanced budgets were achieved through the hard work and dedicated oversight of Governor Mark Dayton and his brand of sound fiscal management, and that is structural balance. Strictly speaking, structural balance occurs in a budget when revenues are growing faster than expenditures. A truly structurally balanced budget is one that supports financial sustainability for multiple years into the future. Today, we are forecasting structural balance for the next 4 years. Structural balance has been the brand of Governor Dayton since the day of his administration, acting as a guiding principle to ensure that our financial foundation remains solid, and it has worked. Despite changes in leadership around the Capitol, changes in the minority party and majority party, Governor Dayton and his commitment to structural balance is the one constant that we've seen putting these 8 forecasts in a row. If you look across the nation, we are seeing a number of states struggling with budget difficulties. 26 states have or still need to close budget gaps for the current fiscal year. 11 states are already projecting budget shortfalls for fiscal year 2018. Meanwhile, Minnesota continues to grow. Not only is our economy continuing to grow at a moderate pace, our quality of life continues to be among the best in the nation. In fact, today, Minnesota is being named as the 3rd best state in the nation by U.S. News and World Report. In making their determination, U.S. News looked at more than 60 metrics and thousands of data points. Minnesota ranks at the top of the pack among states for economic opportunities, affordability, infrastructure, access to health care, educational attainment, and the highest labor force participation in the nation. Time after time, Minnesota is singled out for national recognition. Just last year, Minnesota was named the best state for job creation by Gallup, as well as the 2nd best run state according to 24/7 Wall Street. These accolades align with Minnesota's core values. Minnesotans expect value for their investments, and maintaining a structurally balanced budget is the way to ensure Minnesotans continue to enjoy the quality of life that they expect and essential services that they know and deserve. But we must also talk about caution. We first projected a positive balance in November of 2013. That was a start of rewriting our economics and budget story. We reversed a $6 billion deficit that greeted this administration in 2011, and we now are looking at a $1.65 billion positive balance today. While we stand here today recognizing our balanced budget, we must recognize how quickly balances can turn into deficits. Back in 1999, Minnesota had large positive balances. A decision was made to implement across-the-board permanent income tax cuts. Many thought with the state's positive balance, Minnesota could afford the tax rate cuts, but budgeting is not just about the current budget. It is also about projecting for the future. The income tax rate cuts made just before the dot-com bubble burst in 2000. The state's positive balance turned into deficits 9 out of 11 following years. I imagine today that we will hear from a number of leaders from the House and Senate today stand up and call for large tax cuts. And we need to be careful about whether we can afford them. Calling to repeat what we did in 1999 must be cautiously avoided. It did not work in 1999, and it will not work now. If I sound cautious, it is because there are a number of unique risks in this forecast that could amplify the impacts of wrong budget decisions. Before Dr. Komplakidis describes the risks in detail, I want to mention two right up front. First, that the U.S. is in the fourth longest economic expansion on record, and second, considerable uncertainty remains about which proposed U.S. economic policy changes will be enacted in the near future and what their impact will be on the economy. Until those changes become clearer, their impact on the economy remains sources of risk for this forecast. We must keep these risks in mind as we prepare the budget for the next biennium. We want to maintain the state's strong financial health and be positioned to weather unexpected changes and uncertainty. As for next steps, I just want to mention that as a result of the forecast, MMB will analyze and revise the budget proposals that the governor made on January 24th. We will revisit those expenditures and those revenue estimates. The Department of Revenue will reprice the tax bill that the governor proposed, and all those repricing and revisiting will be done in the next week or so. So Governor Dayton will have any supplemental budget changes in the first part of March. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Komplakidis.
Thank you. So I'm going to start by talking about the U.S. economic outlook, then I'm going to move to Minnesota's economy, and finally to the changes in our revenue forecast. The first slide shows the annual percentage change in U.S. real GDP, both the history and the forecast, by Minnesota's macroeconomic consulting firm IHS. The dark bars show IHS's February 2017 outlook, the one that informs the current Minnesota forecast, and the light bars show their November outlook. The chart shows that the outlook for U.S. economic growth has improved since the November forecast. The economic data coming in since we released our forecast in December has been mostly positive, showing improvements in personal income, business spending on equipment and business spending on equipment and structures, employment, and consumer spending. In addition to that positive economic news, IHS has incorporated into their baseline outlook federal fiscal stimulus in the form of lower individual and corporate income tax rates and increased infrastructure spending. And those are expected to be, within this outlook, they're expected to be enacted this year and are expected to boost economic growth starting in 2018 and continuing through our forecast period. You can see that boost to 2018 growth in the chart. IHS has slightly increased their forecast for economic growth in 2017, this year, from 2.2% in November's outlook to 2.3% in February. But regarding 2018, higher forecasts for real consumer spending, and that's buoyed by that expected fiscal stimulus, and business capital purchases offset an increased drag from net exports to raise 2018 growth forecast from 2.2% in November to 2.7% in February. The next slide, I'm sorry, I went too far. The next slide explains part of that forecast change. This slide shows forecast comparison for real consumer spending growth. Consumer spending is expected to remain the primary source of growth in the economy. In this outlook, real consumer spending is expected to grow 3.2% in 2018, compared to 2.5% in the November outlook. The faster growth continues through the forecast period, with 2019 consumer spending growing 2.9% in this forecast, compared to 2.4% in November. Consumer spending is expected to be supported by improvements in employment, in earnings, and household wealth. And those household wealth improvements, in turn, are due to increases in home prices and increases in the stock market. So the increases in household wealth are expected to stimulate consumer spending. But on top of those positive economic factors, as I said, the February U.S. outlook assumes lower U.S. personal tax rates and new infrastructure spending spread over 10 years. And that's expected to fuel real consumer spending growth starting in 2018. You'll see the stronger consumer spending growth reflected in our sales tax forecast. Before I move to the Minnesota economy, I want to add to Commissioner Franz's caution that considerable uncertainty remains about U.S. economic policy and which changes will be enacted and what their impact will be on the economy. At this time, IHS, the macro consulting firm, feels there's not enough clarity regarding changes to trade policy, immigration policy, healthcare policy, regulatory policy, and business investment incentives to incorporate those into the outlook. Until those changes become more clear, their impact on key economic sectors, including financial services, manufacturing, international trade, and healthcare, remain sources of forecast risk. So they have felt that there's enough clarity to incorporate the lower tax rates and the infrastructure spending. They don't feel there's enough clarity to incorporate other economic policy changes yet. And even aside from U.S. policy uncertainty, there are risks inherent in this forecast that you also heard about from the Commissioner. The rate of U.S. economic growth in this forecast is below the 3.1% average annual real GDP growth that we had prior to the Great Recession. Slow growth makes the economy more vulnerable to shocks, reducing its capacity to weather an unexpected event. And the current economic expansion is now into its 8th year, well beyond the average length of post-war U.S. expansions. So the longer the economic cycle gets, the riskier the bet becomes that it will continue. Minnesota's economy continues its moderate growth path. The state continues to add jobs at a steady rate, keeping the unemployment rate below the U.S. rate. Robust demand for workers, together with low unemployment, have created a tight labor market, putting upward pressure on wages. Statewide, there are as many job vacancies as there are job seekers, and recent months have seen increases in both average number of weekly hours worked by private sector employees and their average hourly earnings. The chart shows annual growth in total Minnesota wage and salary income. This is like adding up all the payrolls of the state of Minnesota and then seeing how that grows. So as long as it's above zero, that number is growing, that total wage and salary income is growing. And those numbers can grow if we have more people working, so that's employment growth, or if average wages per worker increase. That's average wage growth. And in our forecast, both of those things are growing, both employment and average earnings. So we now expect slightly higher wage and salary income growth over the forecast period than we had projected in November. We expect wages per worker to pick up, and combining that with moderate employment growth, we expect to see total wage and salary income to grow between 4.7% and 5.2% per year over the forecast period. Our revenue forecast appears on this table. On the left is our new revenue forecast for the current biennium, along with the dollar amount changes from the prior estimate. And on the right is the same for the next biennium. Total general fund revenues for the current biennium are now forecast to be $75 million more than the November 16 forecast, adjusted for recent law changes. So we have adjusted the left-hand side, the November 16 forecast for Chapter 1 concerning federal conformity and Chapter 2 providing healthcare premium relief. Higher expected individual income and slightly higher corporate income tax revenue more than offsets lower expected sales, state general property, and other revenue. The current forecast for 2018-19, the next biennium, is $321 million more than the November forecast adjusted for law changes. The increased forecast arises primarily from higher expected growth in economic activity. So specifically regarding the income tax, that's being influenced by higher expected growth in wages and in non-wage income. On the sales tax, that's being influenced by higher expected taxable sales. And for the corporate tax, that's being influenced by higher expected corporate profits. Finally, I want to reemphasize the risks to this forecast. There's significant policy uncertainty regarding U.S. economic policy. Some of that may be clarified in coming months, but some of that uncertainty is likely to persist for some time. Global growth will continue to affect Minnesota businesses that export manufactured goods, agricultural commodities, iron ore, and changes in trade policy will have an impact on them. In this outlook, inflation is expected to gradually increase from what have been very low rates. But if prices accelerate more quickly than the Federal Reserve prefers, they might act, and that could lead to a different outcome for the economy than what is currently forecast. And I've talked about the economy being an economy that's in a long, low growth expansion being vulnerable to shocks. And finally, for the next biennium, we are forecasting out 28 months. None of the revenues for the next biennium obviously have been collected, and a lot can change in 2.5 years. So I'll pass it over to Budget Director Kelly.
Good morning. I am going to speak to the expenditure changes in this forecast and then put the spending and revenue together to speak to the budget outlook for our budget horizon. So if you look at the bottom line on the table up on the screen, you can see that there's a very small change in spending with this forecast compared to our previous estimates. $12 million reduction in fiscal years 16-17, $156 million increase in the next biennium. In all 4 years of our forecast period, the growth in education spending increases. You can see $24 million this biennium, $95 million next biennium. We have better, more accurate data on student counts, which are higher than we had projected. And in addition, special education costs have grown in this past year, which increases our estimates for the forecast period. Both of these increases are offset by somewhat lower poverty concentration estimates, which lower spending in some areas of education. And this is a trend we have seen in several forecasts. So overall, a net increase in education spending in both biennia. Health and Human Services spending has been lowered in the current biennium by $42 million, you can see on the screen, but increased in the next biennium by $73 million. In the current biennium, we continue to see the average cost of care for home and community-based services and some waivered services decline with their growing enrollment. This is a trend we saw in November that we're seeing continue into this forecast and add additional lower spending. In addition, enrollment has been lowered in the basic health care programs for this fiscal year and in the next few fiscal years as well. Healthcare spending increases in the next biennium by $73 million as the cost of care grows. There are several reasons for the cost growth. One is the exit of Medica from the state health care contract. 300,000 families with children and adults without children will need to move to other plans on the state contract, and this will increase the average payments and drive up our health care costs for public health care programs. This change is in addition to an overall increase in the average cost of care for health care, and this is a basic trend we're seeing in actual costs in fiscal year 16, and it's driving our costs up in future years. Finally, there are savings that we had anticipated with more frequent enrollment verification called periodic data matching, and that action is being delayed with this forecast due to implementation changes, and so those savings are not being realized in this forecast. So if we move forward and take a look at the budget outcome for each biennia, here we see fiscal year 16 and 17, which is our current biennium, and we only have 5 months left to go on this biennium. We continue to project a surplus increasing to $743 million from $656 million in our earlier estimates. $75 million of additional revenue that Dr. Kolomoukidis spoke of, and $12 million of lower spending net together to make a $87 million change. For our next biennium, fiscal years 18 and 19, this is the budget period we are going to be planning for with this legislative session. The balance has improved here as well by $250 million. $321 million of additional revenues are offset by $156 million of additional spending. That nets to the $250. And finally, looking into fiscal years 20 and 21, our planning estimates have improved as well. The trends from fiscal year 18-19 continue into 20 and 21 with a more sizable bump in revenue, which increases our average annual revenue growth to 4% over the 4-year time frame. Spending growth continues as well, but at a slower pace, only 2.7%. So we have structural balance improving in both biennia, but our inflationary pressures also increase with CPI estimates as high as 2.7% in this forecast. That's the highest inflation estimate we've seen in a couple of forecasts. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Commissioner France.
As Dr. Klumbakidis mentioned, there are a lot of risks associated with this forecast. U.S. policy uncertainty, inflation, the long expansion were some of the risks included. We must remain prudent in our budget decisions. Since taking office, Governor Dayton has really tried to make sure that we maintain structural balance budgeting, and this proof is in today's forecast. 8 straight forecasts showing positive balances. If you add to that the restored AAA rating, it's a budgeting brand that is really one we can trust. We need to maintain the solid financial foundation as we make important decisions now for the future of our state. And with all the risks included in this forecast now, we believe the time is not to veer from our path with structural balance. And with that, we'll take questions.
Spending or tax cuts, will he go with the 13 mentions of the word positive in the forecast, or the 11 mentions of uncertainty, or the 9 mentions of risk, and the 3 mentions of caution? Which one?
I was going to say yes. But that's a great question, because one of the things that you really do have to think about with this forecast is we obviously have more resources available. And what better time to have those resources available than in a time of uncertainty? But as you look at the resources available, these are all projections. None of the revenue has been collected for any of these 4 years that we're talking about. The budget hasn't been enacted for the next budget cycle. So it really is, I think, incumbent upon all of us to look carefully at not just the inflation and the other risks that Dr. Klumbakidis mentioned, but if you're going to make spending decisions, if you're going to make taxing decisions, how do you do it in a way that maintains structural balance? We believe that that is the key to making that decision. So that balance of positive and caution is something I think we're going to hear a lot about for the rest of this session.
Uncertainty. Do you mean political uncertainty?
We mean
And
economic. We mean economic and U.S. economic policy and fiscal policy.
And do you assign any of that risk to the president in particular?
Well, there is only one president now, so I think that would have to be where it would. It's not just the president; it's the entire process in Washington D.C. Obviously, Congress and the Senate and the House have to agree on any budget proposals or any tax changes. So it's a complicated situation.
Of this jump in the CPI numbers and what it means for us. If we were still forecasting the way we did in 2002, this would be showing a deficit. Explain what that's caused that big change in the CPI and how that affects the Minnesota budget.
Well, if you look at the numbers and you see how that the revenue stream for is about $45 billion, and you add inflation, as that number increases, obviously the inflationary effect of that and expenditures that go with that increase dramatically as well. So I think what we're seeing is that the inflation number, we've tried to project inflation for those parts of the budget that don't include inflationary figures. Some of the budget does include inflationary adjustments, but some do not. We've tried to mirror or project what elements do not, but it's a cautionary. What happens if you don't include inflation in a budget is it comes out of agency budgets, and they figure out ways to make cost savings and deal with that inflation on a regular basis. So inflation is an important element to take into consideration. It's something we need to be cautious of.
You're talking about a lot of uncertainty in this projection. Are you quantifying this uncertainty at all? That there's a confidence interval or a margin of error in terms of how a range for lawmakers to consider that you're reasonably confident that the revenue will be within this many billion and this many billion or something like that? Or is it just uncertainty?
What I'd like to do is have Dr. Klumbakidis explain the different levels of confidence that IHS has in their projections. If you will.
So first, we we do release a report that identifies the uncertainty in the forecast, and that's due a couple of weeks after the forecast. But regarding the U.S. economic forecast, IHS, their baseline outlook, they assign a 60% probability to their baseline outlook. That's a subjective probability, not a statistical probability. They assign a 25% probability to a more pessimistic outlook in which a trade war and lack of business confidence helps bring about a recession in 2018. And then they assign the rest of the probability to a more positive economic outlook in which improved business confidence improves investment in equipment and expenditures and raises productivity.
Commissioner, you talk about being prudent. Are you talking about stashing more money away? You're talking about, be a little more specific on what should be done here.
Well, there are a number of issues. When you look at our recent AAA rating that we got in summer of 2016, there are a number of ways that we could sort of lose that rating as kind of an indication of what you don't want to do. And one of them would be, for example, to spend more of the budget reserve that we currently have. We have about $2 billion in the budget reserve. $350 million of that is cash, and about $1.6 million is in the budget reserve. So I think the rating agencies would look askance at if we spent more of that. If we also did not do anything regarding the unfunded pension liability. As you know, in the governor's budget proposal on January 24th, he recommended some serious investments in reducing the unfunded liability of our state pension plans. And I think the other thing is if we eliminated structural balance. So I do think those three elements, if you maintain structural balance, if you deal with the unfunded pension liability, and if you maintain the budget reserve, those are the kinds of things that other folks outside of Minnesota look to. The other way to really deal with the prudence of budgeting is looking at the inflation factor that was just mentioned. So trying to leave some money on the bottom line is another way that you can deal with the forward effects of inflation.
Budget reserves, I take you think it should stay like that?
Well, as the chief financial officer, I would always like to see the budget reserve filled to its capacity. But I think as a prudent matter, that is something we would like to see. So remember, in this forecast, there is no automatic addition to the reserve. In November, the November forecast, if we have a positive balance, 33% of that positive balance will go into the reserve automatically by law. That is something that a number of states are now starting to mirror. We've been touted as having one of the most sophisticated and smart policies for budget reserve. So we do have that in place, and that is something that we can rely on too in November.
How much room do we have left for tax cuts? There will be a robust appetite in the Republican legislature.
Tax cuts are spending. It's like any kind of spending. If you're going to propose a tax cut, is it targeted? Is it helping the people you really want to help? And can you afford it in the future? Does it blow a hole in the budget in the future? Those are the questions you ask about any spending and any tax cut.
So what kind of room would you suggest there is?
Well, the governor will be reviewing the forecast. He'll be reviewing his budget and his tax proposal to decide whether he wants to make any changes in that. I don't know at this time.
Should lawmakers consider leaving money on the bottom line for unanticipated federal costs, for example, picking up a larger share of Medicaid billing?
As Dr. Klumbakidis mentioned, the risk of changes in federal health care policy really was not factored into the forecast in terms of when that might happen and how much that might be. You know, it's really, that's just an example of those uncertainties that we don't know about that are hard to quantify at this time. And there are other areas, other regulations, the trade war potential, and other issues. So I think to the extent that you are concerned about things happening that you don't know about, it always makes sense to leave money on the bottom line. The other thing, though, that Dr. Klumbakidis mentioned is, you know, if the tax bill doesn't happen this year, you know, then should you really rely on that potential growth in 2018? If the infrastructure spending does not happen this year or get started for 2018, should you rely on those estimates of growth? So the budget does rely on these projections, and you know as well as we how much faith you can put in whether they'll happen or not. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of variables in those decisions.
Factoring in that some of the risks that you outlined for the Trump administration could result in trade war, et cetera, it does kind of sound as though you're saying that Trump's expected policies are a net plus for the state's economy. Is that an accurate way of interpreting what you're saying?
I'm going to let Dr. Klumbakidis answer that one.
Sure, you understand that there's been an unevenness in how the proposed policies have been incorporated into the forecast. So what the consulting firm thought was they had the most confidence in is these tax cuts, which are stimulative. That's what fiscal stimulus does. And they're deficit financed. And so they're in the assumption. And so there's no trade-off there. And so that can be positive for the economy. A lot of other policies could have differential effects on the economy, and those simply do not have enough clarity yet to know whether or not they should be incorporated into the outlook and what the impact will be.
For a second, you talked about the upward pressure on wages, but I think a year ago at this time, you said there was a jobs mismatch, that the jobs that were available were not, people were not trained who were looking for jobs, or they were in different geographic areas. Is there still that mismatch, or have we sort of evened out?
So the tightness of the job market can be measured by the ratio of the number of job openings to the number of, or the number of job seekers to the number of job openings. And that's very close to 1-to-1. And that's what I mean by a tight labor market, where we have high demand for labor and low unemployment. But you know that we don't have complete full employment. There are still people who are unemployed and looking for work. And so that by definition means that it's not the case that every single person who's looking for a job right now can find a job that they want in the place that they want, in the occupation they want, at the wage they want. So by definition, there's a mismatch.
In terms of jobs and the economy in general, where are there a lot of job openings and you don't have the people to fill them?
Yeah, I don't remember exact numbers on the location of job vacancies. I remember that there was definitely a mix between the metro area and greater Minnesota, but I don't remember the numbers exactly. I can say that in terms of industries where job openings are, there are usually job openings in the areas that have a lot of turnover, like retail, for instance. But now we have we have job openings in construction and professional and business services, and those are places where people where employers are looking for workers.
You talked about the national economy and how different things affect. On the state economy, is it pretty much like previous forecasts where it affects pretty local areas and not the statewide, like you're talking about ag and...
Thank you. This budget forecast is more very good economic news for Minnesota. It's the 8th straight budget forecast that shows still further improvement in our state's finances. Minnesota's progress has been made possible in large part by our state's strong and still growing economy, which has added 255,400 new jobs since January 2011, and due to our sound fiscal management. Our progress stands in stark contrast to the fiscal problems confronting many other states. The National Association of State Budget Officers reports that 24 states now have fiscal 2017 general fund revenues coming in below their projections. This is the highest number of states expecting revenue shortfalls since 2010. And nearly half of all states are projected to have budget shortfalls for fiscal year 2018. The Minnesota Departments of Revenue and Management and Budget will now reprice my previous budget proposals based upon this forecast. They expect to complete this work by the end of next week. Accordingly, I will not release any supplemental budget proposals until the week of March 13th. However, I want to issue a strong note of caution to the legislature. The section, quote, significant risks with this forecast is not factored into the actual numbers of the forecast. It lists U.S. policy uncertainty, international trade, inflation, slow growth expansion, and the fact that 28 months remain until the end of fiscal years 2018 and 19. I would add that there are 52 months until the end of the fiscal 2021 biennium. The effects of those uncertainties are presently unmeasurable. However, their potentials for seriously negative impacts on our state's economy and fiscal well-being are enormous. At the National Governors Association conference last weekend, the meetings with President Trump, with other key administration officials, and among my fellow governors were characterized by unprecedented degrees of uncertainty, anxiety, and confusion. In those meetings and in other recent pronouncements, administration officials offered only generalities about healthcare reform, trade policies, and other crucial matters. And they regularly contradicted one another when describing the details. I note that just yesterday, the director of OMB raised the specter of cuts in Social Security and Medicare, only to be immediately rebutted by the president's press secretary. Similarly, despite repeated questioning by governors of both parties, administration officials were unable or unwilling, but I think it was unable, to provide details about their intended changes to Medicaid. All of which means that the uncertainties surrounding this budget forecast demand extreme caution and restraint from my administration, the legislature, and various affected interest groups. We have worked hard to achieve these budget surpluses. They must be preserved. Glad to respond to questions on this subject.
Talking about the caution and the need to not be too eager. Do you view tax cuts and spending similarly there? That the question is just how much money is on the bottom line, or do you think one of those poses a bigger risk than another?
It's on the bottom line, but I think you've got to look especially at the tails. You know, the 2021 surplus grew significantly, and that will ease the room for both tax and spending cuts, but particularly tax cuts, which, as you know, most of them don't take effect until 1 year in the 18-19 biennium, and then 2 years of the next biennium, so you could almost double the costs of many of them in the biennium, the outline biennium. So I think that's where it had to be particularly careful, but that was true before, and this forecast provides more flexibility for those decisions.
Some money on the bottom line to prepare for any unforeseen costs that may be passed down by the federal government.
You know, it's going to be hard to quantify what that amount should be. And of course, we have a budgeted reserve and cash flow account of $2 billion. But you know, we'll see. It may be that before the end of this legislative session, we'll get a better idea from Washington. We may get in the next couple of weeks. The president and was pressing Secretary Price to be more definite about when they would be making their proposals on Medicaid and other health care changes. And the Secretary said the end of March, and the president cut that in half. So we'll see when it actually occurs. And of course, then the Congress has to act as well. But we may have a better idea by the time we had to finalize the state's budget in May, what some of those impacts are going to be. But others of them are going to be really unforeseeable because the Congress is going to have to act, and that's the Secretary of the Treasury, Mr. Mnuchin, said their goal was to have a tax bill passed by the Congress by the August recess. So that's and for the Congress, that's a fast timetable. So we'll just have to see. But you know, we do need to protect against a downturn. I think the odds are in the 52 weeks between now and the end of fiscal 2021, we're going to have some economic disruptions nationally and internationally that are not factored into this forecast. And what those are and how consequential those are is I can't predict, but I think it's very likely we'll see them. You look at the economic forecast here, it assumes a consistent level of economic growth nationally, and that applies to Minnesota, and I think that's very optimistic myself.
The work ahead, it seems like the hard work is now ahead, and so far session has been kind of a honeymoon. You're fresh off another bipartisan bill signing. Does it all turn here?
Well, it firms up here. You know, the legislature's properly been waiting for this forecast to start setting their budget targets and like, so it gets more real, and the numbers don't have the same latitude that the language in policy bills might have. So, you know, it now is going to come down to, we have about 3 months left It's going to come down to, really hard look at all these, because even with these surpluses, I think Representative Davis said the tax cut proposals are $6 to $7 billion. So, that obviously exceeds greatly, and there are other, appetites as well. So it's going to take a lot of pruning and a lot of compressing.
So given the uncertainty you talked about, can we expect to see more budget changes, budget proposal changes?
I haven't given that enough thought. I've had a couple of requests. Hennepin County Medical Center, for example, is in dire financial straits, and that's something I think is very important, not only to this metro region, but the entire state. Is one of our level 1 health facilities and does a phenomenal job. So that kind of thing needs consideration. It wasn't on the table before, but I'm not going to say anything until I've had a chance to reprice and also talk with commissioners and staff.
Down the road, the rest of the legislative session, would you expect, because of the changes in Washington, would you expect to keep having to update your budget proposal?
It depends on the changes in Washington. And again, those are really unforeseeable at this point. They don't know themselves. I mean, and when they take effect, now they talk about the Affordable Care Act changes taking effect in calendar year 2020. Well, obviously that won't affect it directly the next biennium. It's just too soon to say.
Republicans are already pointing out that your initial budget increased the budget by about 10%. Is that considered cautious?
Well, my budget provides for a $1.64 billion surplus in the next biennium and over $2 billion in the final biennium. That's the fiscal management that we've imposed on state government, which have kept revenues apace with spending increases, which are due to health care and education primarily. So I'm very proud of what we've established. And we've established the surpluses where previously there were deficits. And, I know I'm not going to get any credit from Republicans. That's not their line of work. But after all the carping and harping, I think there ought to be acknowledgement. And the U.S. News report just again says, third best state in the nation. We've been rated consistently highly by various national organizations. We've done a lot of things right. And the reason that they have a surplus to talk about giving back in tax cuts, or for whatever other reason, is because we righted this fiscal state of this ship of this state, and we got it on a trajectory now where we'll continue to have healthy surpluses, and they share a responsibility, the legislature, with me to make sure that continues.
The state's reserve fund now, it's very close to what experts have recommended. Would you be open to a use of that surplus for anything in a budgeted way going forward?
Not the use of it. Commissioner Franz and the ghost of former Commissioner Showalter keep whispering, add to the reserve, and that's something I'll consider given the uncertainties ahead. But we'll just have to get to see. But I don't see using the present reserve for any other purpose.
The uncertainty in handling the new administration is changing the budget year off year dynamic at the legislature. Do you think you'll come back next year and have to respond more to changes from the federal government?
Very well. Of course, they'll be coming back next year, so I mean they'll have that opportunity. Whether we'll need to do something before then, I guess it remains to be seen. I mean, it depends on when they make their changes and how that affects, for example, the enrollment for 2018 under the Affordable Care Act, if that still exists. I mean, how that's going to impact. I don't foresee that we'll have to have a special session. Our record in obtaining special sessions has not been promising, but I would certainly like to have anything that needs to be done wait till whenever they come back in next year. But again, I couldn't get the administration officials who are the decision makers on these matters. I don't think they yet have resolved within themselves how they're going to proceed and what their timetable is going to be and when they're going to take effect. So if they don't know, certainly nobody else does.
Do you agree with the consultants that there's about a 25% probability that the Trump administration's policies will prove to be a negative on the economy, or do you agree with this sort of 60%?
I haven't heard those percentages. I don't know. What are they saying?
60% they assume the forecast now is 25%. They assume the negative.
Do you think they're right about that?
sort of like the weather forecast last week, you know, and I don't know. I'll defer to their, you know, they make extremely sophisticated and complex judgments based on all these factors that I don't have the information. So I don't. I'll just defer to whatever they said.
Based on your interactions recently, do you feel like there's a greater or lesser likelihood that the impact is going to be positive or negative?
Well, it depends, you know, I mean, it depends on how this plays out, you know, they're talking about a significant tax cut with the idea that it's going to boost economic growth. The Secretary of Treasury said that they're going to get economic growth up to 3% or even a bit higher. That's going to be a very positive impact on the federal budget as well as the state budget. And then, of course, you've got to, again, shift the cost of Medicaid to the states, to all the states, and impacts on that. I mean, you know, it's a balance. Trade, you know, the agriculture industry and communities are very concerned about the fossil trade war and that like. Target Corporation representatives were at the NGA, and they're very concerned, along with Best Buy and others, about the possible import tax. I mean, there's so many of these things that are just, you know, being talked about now, but nobody knows what they're going to be. You know, obviously, the administration intends that they're going to have positive effects, but you know, we'll see what happens. I can't predict.
Thank you.
Did anybody talk about sound insulation when this thing was being? That's democracy, though. All right, thank you.
Is your crew coming? Okay. They'll join us, I guess. Are we ready? Well, good afternoon. Obviously, received the forecast today. We believe that's good news for Minnesota, good news for Minnesotans, additional revenue projected to come into the state's budget. Obviously, when you look at where the revenue comes from, it comes from Minnesotans. It comes from Minnesotans doing better. It's for the most part from increased revenue collections from income taxes. The bottom line is when Minnesotans do better, the state of Minnesota does better. That will lead me to the only conclusion that I think we together can come to, which is we need to put forward a state budget that puts Minnesotans first. And that's what Republicans will do. We'll put forward a state budget that invests in Minnesotans so that we can continue to grow our economy and continue to do well as a state. Some concerning things, obviously, you know, this revenue forecast, even prior to this with a $1.4 billion surplus, Governor Dayton was still proposing about a $1 billion increase in taxes and fees, still taking more money out of the pockets of Minnesotans. We find that concerning. Hopefully now he can back away from that proposal. You know, he still intends to increase spending about 10%. So the governor continues to want to grow state government faster than the economy is growing, and I think that's out of touch with what most common sense Minnesotans would expect of state government. But we're optimistic. We're optimistic that we can come together, work together to agree on a budget that will invest back into Minnesotans and put Minnesotans first. So we are optimistic. We believe it's good news, and it's a good opportunity for us to put Minnesotans first. Senator.
Well, good afternoon. The Senate thinks it's good news as well. I've been optimistic that we would have a greater surplus than what we did before today, and the Speaker and I were betting about how much more it would be, and I'm not sure who won. I would say I won since I have the microphone, but it does, an extra surplus doesn't solve everything. We still have to balance the budget, and like the Speaker mentioned, the Governor had proposed prior today a 10% increase in spending. And even though we have a surplus, in our minds, that doesn't mean that we should continue to increase spending at rates above what a family would spend. Talk to the average Minnesotan and say, did you get a 7% increase? And that's what we have prior to what the governor was proposing, which is 10%. So it's a good news, the surplus. It makes it easier to balance the budget. If you look at the out years, that surplus continues, so we expect that there should be some real tax relief. But again, we're going to watch spending. We want to make sure that we're not overspending. You heard the governor talk about what we don't know what the federal government's going to do. We could easily have $1 billion or more of shortage in health and human resources down the road, depending on what they do. And how does that affect us? But today, we're going to work with what we have today and move that forward, and then whatever the federal government does, we'll adjust to that. But for today, it's good news, and it allows us to do the things that we want to do. We said we want to pass a roads and bridges bill. You should expect that. We want tax relief. We want to fix the health care crisis. All of those should be able to be done this year. So thank you. With that, I think we can take some questions for, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Joyce.
I would just say we're happy with where we're at with the surplus, and I think it's because we've been good fiscal stewards of our tax dollars, and I think that's what the Republicans in the House, and we're happy to have the Republicans in the Senate in control too. And it's interesting, I think if you look at kind of where some of the budget proposals have been in past years, I think that the reason we're in a healthy fiscal state now is because we've put the brakes on some of that excessive spending, and we view it as our job to continue to be fiscally responsible, and the number one priority we have is for the taxpayers of Minnesota and making sure that every policy that we put forward, every dollar we spend, is spent wisely, and we will continue to do that, and we will continue to prioritize the same things that we've been talking about, transportation, tax relief, and fixing the health care situation. So we're happy with where we're at, and we'll continue to work hard to make sure that we are looking out for those taxpayer dollars in the best way we know how.
Caution and uncertainty in it. Do you feel that this, whatever budget you guys pass, should include money left in the bottom line as a buffer against this, or do you think the reserve is enough to satisfy that uncertainty?
Frankly, we'd like to leave a little more money on the bottom line of Minnesotans. We think the best thing that we can do with the money that we've collected from them, and remember that a surplus is we've collected more money than we need from Minnesotans. We think we should give some of that back, reinvest back in Minnesotans, put Minnesotans first. Growing government at a clip faster than what Minnesota family budgets are growing or what Minnesota's economy is growing is simply unsustainable. And I'll remind folks, I know the governor likes to take credit for the situation that we're in right now, but I would remind you that if we let him go untethered for the last few years and just rubber stamped all of his spending increases, we would not have a surplus today. Absolutely not. We'd probably have a huge deficit. So we don't think that huge increases in spending, in state spending, are what got us here, and I think everyone can agree on that. This really is because we've had some prudent fiscal oversight and not letting the governor overspend. We really need to keep the growth of state government below what Minnesota family budgets are growing or what Minnesota's economy is growing. That just makes common sense. So we think the best thing to do with the surplus is reinvest it back into Minnesotans. Let's give them some of their money back and let them prosper from the hard work that they've done to get us in this situation.
The budget commissioner just reminded us that tax cuts count as spending. So how much does this forecast allow in tax cuts or slash spending?
I'll say as much as possible. And one thing I wanted to say about the report too is yes, there is some uncertainty. I think that's accurate. But if you look at what job providers are doing, they're hiring more employees since the election. They're buying more goods and materials. They're buying more buildings. And that came out in that report. And so that is an optimism that we should pay attention to, and also what they're looking for to prosper. And that's why some of our numbers are up. And my hope is that they will continue to be up.
When you say give back to Minnesotans, reinvest in Minnesotans, I've heard in the past you're not talking about issuing Jesse checks. What are you talking about? What does that mean?
Well, that's what we're working on now. We're talking about a number of areas that we want to provide tax relief. At this point, I think we're more general in just saying that we're going to have a significant tax relief package. You've heard us talk about small business property tax relief, ag property tax relief. We talked about Social Security income exemption. We've talked about tax credits for student loans. There's a number of things that we're talking about, but the House and Senate will work together, and we'll come up with a plan that we're going to submit to the governor and work with him to get buy-in.
Will we see any reduction in tax rates, or are we thinking just credits?
Let me just jump in back to Mary's question. One thing I wanted to bring up is I think the most significant thing in this forecast is the 2021 increase of $684 million in the budget surplus. I mean, before you had a situation where the amount of money that was available in 2021 was almost exactly equal to what was available in 18 or 19. The fact that the economies and the budget reserve is growing so much more, not the budget reserve, the money available is growing so much more in 2021, makes it a lot easier for us to do tax cuts than we could have done before.
What was your question?
Does this amount of money on, especially in the tails, give you room to make adjustments to tax rates, or is this going to be made through tax credits?
Well, we're obviously going to go through the committee process to make those decisions, and our committee chairs and committee members are going to want to have input on that. And we're not going to say that, it's all going to be here or there. What we want to do is find the best ways of helping Minnesotans out. Remember, we had a tax bill that passed the legislature last year with 89% of legislators voting for it, and the governor vetoed it. So while we increased spending and it was okay for the governor to do all of those things, what the governor did was prevent Minnesotans from getting any of their money back in the last 2 years, and that was concerning. And I think we can't let it go another 2 years without reinvesting back in Minnesotans. We're obviously continuing to collect more money than we need to operate state government. State government is growing faster than family budgets, it's growing faster than Minnesota's economy. It's time to get those numbers in check. And the best way to do that and continue to, it doesn't mean that you have to necessarily always reduce the growth of government. Why don't we increase the rate of the economic growth? And at that time, we can actually reduce tax rates even further. That's the result of investing back in Minnesotans. Now, our budgeting and scoring doesn't always work that way because we don't do dynamic scoring here. But everybody knows that if we increase the money we give back to Minnesotans and reinvest back in them, that will help grow the economy, which will ultimately help us gain more revenue at the state. So, we've got an opportunity to really put Minnesotans first, and that's what our budget will do.
Mr. Speaker, the governor will term additional spending investments in Minnesota's future, positioning the state for economic growth in the future. Are any of those investments, as far as you and Mr. Majority Leader, are any of those investments reasonable?
I think that we will propose investments as well. I think we will propose investments in K-12 education. We'll propose investments in health and human services. And frankly, those are areas in transportation and roads and bridges. Those are areas I think Minnesotans expect us to invest in. But it also means we need to look at the entire state budget and make sure that we're conducting the business of the state in the most effective way possible, that Minnesotans are getting bang for their buck, that they appreciate the services they're getting. We're doing it efficiently as well. So it's a complex scenario, and we need to just make sure that we're doing our due diligence to ensure that we're using the resources Minnesotans have given us wisely, and we're providing them the services that we think they demand. So we will make investments. What those will be determined over the next few weeks as we go through committee process. But one of the big priorities will be tax relief, giving Minnesotans some of their money back. Governor Dayton shunned Minnesotans and Minnesota taxpayers during the last 2 years by vetoing a tax bill that had 89% support in the legislature. That wasn't putting Minnesotans first. That was putting state government first. And it's time that we focused on let's grow Minnesota family budgets, let's grow Minnesota's economy, and let's let Minnesota's state budget and state government be secondary. Let's put policies forth that will invest in Minnesotans and put Minnesotans first. That's going to be our priority. Senator?
So the governor gave us his first offer, and based on that first offer, and I think where we will begin, I'm convinced that we will find a pathway through. The numbers may not be exactly the same. I believe we will have more tax relief, but some of the other key areas, I'm pretty confident that we can get things done in a timely manner.
we asked the governor what's ahead, and he said it gets real now, and so far session has kind of been a honeymoon, lots of bipartisan bill signings. Do you feel like it changes today and going forward now?
He's accurate that it gets real now, but I don't see any reason why the tone has to change. We've done a number of bills already that have passed that I can't say there was 100% support for. You saw Sunday liquor go through yesterday. That was a very divisive issue, frankly, but that one is off the table. Federal tax conformity, we did that early. The health insurance reform and relief bill, that was fairly controversial. That got done as well. And so there's no reason the tone should change. We're going to keep communicating. The governor, I hope, keeps coming to the table. And if we do that, we will get done, and we should get done on time.
I would agree as well. There's no need for the tone to need to change. We have very intentionally set a tone that shows we want to work together. We know that in order to get a state budget, we have to work together to accomplish that. So we have set this tone very intentionally at the beginning of session. I think it shows that we have our sleeves rolled up and we're ready to work with the governor to get the work done for Minnesotans. But it does mean that we're going to need the governor to come our direction a little ways, and it means we're going to have to, reinvest some of this additional surplus back into the pockets of Minnesotans. Let's help them out, and let's get government kind of in line with what Minnesotans' expectations are.
Senator Gazelka, you mentioned before that changes to healthcare policy could blow $1 billion hole in the state budget. The speaker didn't really answer this question. Do you think that you should leave some money on the bottom line in case of policy changes on healthcare, on trade?
I'm not sure that he didn't answer. There's things that we don't know. And so his first answer was that we need some tax relief. We had a $2 billion tax increase a little over 4 years ago, and none of that has gone back. In fact, 1% has gone back of that surplus. 1% has gone back. And so that's our first priority. Having a healthy budget surplus, I think, is a healthy thing when you don't know what the future holds. But we're first focused on tax relief, and then we'll work on everything else after that.
Speaker, you said that you don't think the state government should grow faster than Minnesotans' personal income. Contrast that to the governor's 10% proposal. But this very budget forecast predicts about a 9.4 or 9.5% growth in Minnesota's personal income over the next 2 years.
So is the governor's budget larger than that?
It's slightly larger,
okay.
But, it's not a drastic difference.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
And that only takes into account those state taxes. It doesn't take into account local taxes and other taxes that Minnesotans pay. And
And the healthcare access fund.
I think we could go on all after. I mean, the amount of taxes that Minnesotans pay, and I think and I want to be polite, but your question is flawed. If we think that Minnesotans, I think the average amount of money that Minnesotans pay in it can range anywhere from 0 to over 50% of their income that they pay in taxes. I think what we need to do is appreciate where that money comes from, and respect the taxpayers that pay it in. And yes, Minnesotans want good, efficient service from their government, and I think it's our obligation to provide that, but we need to appreciate the resources they've given us and provide that service very, very effectively, and we can be innovative in the way that we do that, but also very efficiently. And businesses and corporations have had to be creative in the way that they provide the services that they provide, and they're doing it more efficiently, and I think we as government need to do that as well. So that will be part of our budget, making sure that we can operate this government more effectively, but also more efficiently, and that's my goal. But we do want to reinvest back in Minnesotans, and we do want to make sure that it's because of their work that we have this additional resources available. So we need to appreciate that, respect that, and let's reinvest some of that back into them.
I just wanted to hop into on that question. I was looking back to the year that Majority Leader Gazelka and I were elected in 2004, and I believe the general fund budget that year was around $28 billion, and now we're approaching 45. If you look in the out years, it's getting closer to 50 billion, and I don't know that family budgets have increased like that. And so our number one job really is to make sure that the government isn't growing so fast that we can't keep up with it. We shouldn't be growing government just to just to grow government. We should be looking at every single taxpayer dollar that comes in, and we should be, as the speaker said, be spending it in the most efficient and effective way possible. We shouldn't always, every time we get money in, look for the fastest way possibly that we can to spend it. That's not our job as fiduciaries of the state.
More questions? Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Well, it's got to make you smile, really. I'm sitting here thinking back to the 2012 election when Democrats took control of the legislature to work with Governor Dayton. The state had no cash flow account, it was zero. The state had no budget reserve. We owed our schools about $2 billion. And Paul Thiessen and I and our caucuses took over the legislature. And we worked closely with the governor, and we raised some revenue on the top 2% of wage earners. And over my kind of objections, cigarettes, regressive tax, but we did it, and we stabilized the state budget. And I'm pretty proud of that work. And what I'm kind of smiling about is I can remember Senator Han and his colleagues on the floor of the Senate crying Chicken Little that the sky is falling and these tax increases are going to just collapse any economic growth that the state's going to have. That clearly was not true. This state is an incredibly well-run state. Governor Dayton's done a remarkable job. And let me just say, before you print the governor's 10% budget increase, do the math, right? You can make numbers say anything you want to say, but if the governor had a 10% increase in his budget, the current budget's about $43 billion, his budget proposal would have had to have been $4.3 billion increase. That's just not true. It's closer to 3%. So I think that kind of rhetoric is going to create problems going down the road if we're not going to be honest about each other's proposals. So I don't want to use the word warn or the word caution. Just let me say, I would like people to exercise some restraint as we go forward. And if I was king, this $250 million, I'd put it back into the budget reserve because we've taken $326 million from there this session. It's real easy to spend money. See all the green votes for that? Real easy. But with the instability, I think that we see in Washington, D.C., I do think we should park this and this is just me, I haven't talked to Senator Cohen or anybody about this. I think we ought to park that $250 million and try backfill the money that we took out of the budget reserve earlier this session, because there is some uncertainty that begs for some restraint on our part.
It's good news today that we're getting from the new budget forecast. Minnesota's economy is strong and stable, and it's important that this provides an opportunity and a responsibility for us to continue to invest in all Minnesotans and those things that made the budget strong and stable in the first place. And I think at the end of this biennium, we need to look both at the numbers on the spreadsheet, but also the condition of the assets of the state. Our roads and bridges, can we improve those? We should improve those. We have the responsibility and the opportunity to do that as a result of this forecast. Will college be more affordable at the end of 2 years than it is right now? College is too expensive for many families. And there still are families who are having a hard time finding good jobs with good benefits. So I think we have to look at the numbers on the spreadsheet, but you know, it's really important to remember that when Minnesotans are driving down the highway and we haven't taken care of the roads and bridges the way we need to, or they're paying more for higher education than they can afford, that's a reflection on the quality of life in Minnesota as much as the dollars on the bottom line. So it's a great forecast. It reflects a strong and stable economy, but we should take the opportunity to reinvest in all Minnesotans.
Chairman, I might make a couple of quick comments. I was one that has chaired budget committees for many years in the Minnesota legislature. And I've always advocated for a balanced approach to state government. But a couple of things that I thought should be pointed out, considering some of the comments that were made previously. The cost of government is actually going down. In fact, we're going to have a hearing on the House side on that very question coming up. So when you're hearing some of the rhetoric about state spending, keep in mind that relative to personal income, the cost of government is going down, and my good friend Senator Ann Rest, I think, was the original author of the bill, so that we could have some benchmarks to see how we were doing. I do want to comment on the importance of the reserve. A number of years ago, I was served on a Blue Ribbon Commission for the University of Minnesota, and the whole debate was what kind of a budget reserve should the university have. And I became a strong believer in maintaining, in the case of the university, a strong budget reserve, but for the state of Minnesota as well, because we know that our economy is cyclical. And one way that we can plan for the future is to have a good budget reserve, as Senator Bach just pointed out, where we were just a few years ago when Governor Dayton came into office and we had the majority in both the House and the Senate. Good fiscal planning is what put us in the positive position we are in today. And I would hope as you review the budget, write your stories, you'll keep that good news in terms of how we've positioned ourselves moving into the future. Thank you.
As you look at, trying to park that $250 million that you discussed, what worries you most about changes at the federal level that you feel the state may need to prepare for?
I think potentially what they do with healthcare, the repeal of the Affordable Care Act that I guess they voted for 100 times while President Obama was in office. They can't seem to get a vote for now that they're in control. But potentially, I think much of that burden of providing health care could end up shifted back to the states at tremendous cost. And, Minnesota didn't get as much out of the Affordable Care Act as a lot of states did because we were already doing a very, very good job of providing health care for our citizens. But I think that's where the largest risk looms.
Let me just supplement Tom's answer. I would suggest to everybody, you take a look at the budget book and look at page 24, Council of Economic Advisors statement, and you'll have detailed there some of the concerns that the council has. And keep in mind, the council is comprised of 9 economists, a combination of public-private academic. It's a combination of ideologies, and they look at this with a pretty dispassionate basis. But I would suggest to fully answer the question, take a look at their statement, and you'll understand what concerns there are relative to where not just Minnesota, but the country might be going, and the impact that's going to have on the budget. So read those several pages.
Thank you, everybody.